opening the door to the building of the Third Jewish Temple. Some called it a kiss from heaven.
Could we be on the brink of one of the most prophetic events in history? With Donald Trump back in the White House, speculation is soaring. Will his administration play a role in the long-awaited rebuilding of the Third Temple? The political landscape is shifting, and many within Israel's religious community are feeling an unprecedented sense of urgency and divine anticipation. With Trump's known support for Israel and the return of weapons that were previously withheld, many believe this could be the window of opportunity the religious authorities have been waiting for. Could this be the moment where biblical prophecy takes a major step forward? And what does this mean for the future of the Middle East and end times prophecy? Welcome to Jesus Eternal Aura, where we connect current events to biblical prophecy and uncover the truth of God's divine plan.
Mr. Trump could promise to use his building skills to build a temple.
Before you jump to conclusions and think I'm completely out of my mind, let's take a moment to examine this topic from a historical perspective. You might still think I'm crazy after this, but hear me out. When we look at the history of the Jewish temples in Jerusalem, we see a pattern that might indicate something unexpected for the future. Historically speaking, the first temple in Jerusalem was Solomon's Temple. It was the magnificent structure built by King Solomon, the son of David, as the central place of worship for the Jewish people. It stood as a testament to the covenant between God and Israel. Later, it was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Then came the Second Temple, which was significantly renovated and expanded by King Herod. Now, Herod was not fully Jewish, yet he played a crucial role in the construction of this temple, which became a central feature of Jewish worship until its destruction by the Romans in 70 CE. This brings us to an interesting thought. If Solomon had his temple and Herod had his, why not consider the possibility of another? Could there one day be a Trump temple? Now, before you dismiss this as ridiculous, just think about it. We have Trump Tower, so why not a Trump temple? I'm not a rabbi or a theologian, but I believe this is something worth considering. And while this might sound far-fetched to some, history has shown us that the seemingly impossible can happen. Let's take a moment to listen to a perspective on this topic from former Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. In a speech, he mentioned something fascinating while standing at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. He pointed out that certain historical moments in Israel's past were nothing short of miraculous. For instance, 1917, the year of the Balfour Declaration, was a miracle. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 was another miracle. The victory of the Six-Day War in 1967, which allowed Israel to reclaim Jerusalem, was yet another miraculous event. And in 2017, when Jerusalem was officially recognized as Israel's capital by the United States, it was also considered a modern-day miracle. Heggs then asked a compelling question. If all of these events were miracles, then why should we doubt that another miracle, the re-establishment of the Jewish temple, could happen? He admitted that we do not know exactly how such an event would unfold, but history has shown us time and time again that seemingly impossible things become reality. He emphasized that recognizing the facts on the ground is essential to understanding what could happen next. This statement is incredibly significant because it underscores an idea that has been largely overlooked by previous administrations. Every U.S. president before Donald Trump has failed to see the crucial role that the temple plays in achieving peace in the Middle East. While politicians and world leaders have focused on diplomacy, negotiations, and territorial disputes, they have neglected to acknowledge the deep religious and spiritual significance of the temple. Could it be that the key to peace lies not in politics, but in restoring the heart of Israel's religious and national identity? Now, let's examine the current situation in Israel. For the past 76 years, the nation has been embroiled in war and conflict. It has become almost accepted that terrorism and violence are just a way of life in Israel. However, this does not have to be the case. The incoming administration has the opportunity to break the cycle of violence and work alongside Israel to achieve something truly transformative. First and foremost, it is crucial to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Many voices in the international community argue that Israel must accept hostile entities within its borders as an unavoidable reality. However, Israel has the right to defend itself and ensure its security. When Israel takes action against terrorism, It is not committing ethnic cleansing or apartheid, it is simply protecting its citizens from sworn enemies who seek its destruction. Terrorists are not just political opponents, they are individuals who actively seek to destroy the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. They have no rightful place in this land. Terrorism has no place anywhere in the world, but especially not in Israel, a land that has suffered immensely due to violent attacks. The question is, how can this issue be effectively addressed? If the incoming administration takes a strong stance, it could pave the way for a groundbreaking transformation in the region. Imagine if Israel, with full support from the United States, launched a decisive campaign to eradicate terrorism from its borders. This would not be limited to Gaza and Lebanon, but would also extend to Judea and Samaria, the very areas where I am sitting right now. The process would begin by systematically dismantling terrorist infrastructure. From town to town, the Israeli military, with strategic backing from the United States, would clear out terrorist networks and strongholds. This would eliminate the immediate threat posed by extremists who have long operated within these territories. Once this phase is complete, the next logical step would be a process of deportation. If an individual is actively supporting terrorism, they have no place in Israel. This is not a matter of discrimination, but a necessary measure to ensure national security. Anyone who aligns themselves with the ideology of groups that seek the destruction of Israel should be removed from the country. Deportation would serve as a powerful deterrent against radicalism and help to stabilize the region. Additionally, Israel must address the issue of illegal immigration. Contrary to popular belief, illegal immigration is not just a problem in the United States, it is also a major issue in Israel. Hundreds of thousands of illegal residents and squatters have settled in various regions, from the Golan Heights to the Negev Desert. Many of these individuals are not merely seeking economic opportunity, they are aligned with radical agendas aimed at undermining the Jewish state. By taking decisive action against illegal immigration and terrorism, Israel can create the conditions necessary for a historic shift. Once the country is secure and stable, the groundwork can be laid for something even more profound: the reconstruction of the Jewish temple. While this might seem like an unattainable dream, history has proven that great things are possible when faith and action align. The idea of rebuilding the temple is not just about constructing a physical structure, it is about restoring the spiritual heart of Israel. The temple has always been central to Jewish identity and worship, and its absence is deeply felt by many. If the conditions are right, the re-establishment of the temple could become a reality. Of course, such a monumental event would require careful planning and international support. However, if we consider the miraculous events that have already taken place in Israel's history, it is not unreasonable to believe that another miracle could be on the horizon. Perhaps the incoming administration will recognize the significance of this moment and take steps toward making the impossible possible. While the idea of a Trump temple may seem outlandish at first, it is worth considering within the broader historical and political context. If previous generations witnessed the return of the Jewish people to their land, the establishment of the State of Israel, and the miraculous victories that followed, then why should we doubt that the temple could one day be rebuilt? The future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: Israel's destiny is unfolding before our eyes, and we may be on the brink of witnessing something truly extraordinary.
We'll see the building of the third temple in Jerusalem very soon. And we honor our President Trump for what he has done for Jerusalem and for the Jewish people.
The Jewish presence in Israel has long been a subject of contention, but it is clear that attempts to undermine or erase that presence cannot and should not be tolerated. Israel faces ongoing challenges both from external enemies and internal opposition, and it is imperative that these threats are addressed decisively. However, before diving deeper into this topic, let me ask you a question. Did you know that you can support Israel while diversifying your investments? Israel is under attack from those who seek to weaken her. Yet there is a way for individuals like you to play a role in strengthening the nation. One significant way to do this is through investment. My family and I have been clients of the licensed investment firm Wise Money Israel for years. Not only are they financial sponsors, but they are also trusted friends. This firm manages Israeli stock and bond accounts for people across the globe, allowing investors to support Israel while potentially making a profit. Investing in Israel means backing successful companies that power the economy and sustain the Jewish people. The professionals at Wise Money Israel are skilled in investing funds wisely in the local market. Israel's economy is one of the most resilient and innovative in the world, and during these critical times, you can be part of restoring the nation to the blessings God has promised. The Bible tells us that those who bless Israel will themselves be blessed. By aligning your finances with your faith, you not only secure your investments, but also take part in what God is doing to make Israel prosperous and a light to the nations. For more information, check the description below. Don't let your financial resources remain stagnant, put them to good use by investing in Israel. Visit wisemoneyisrael.com/The Israel Guys and sign up for a free consultation today. One of the greatest challenges Israel faces is the presence of individuals and groups that do not recognize its sovereignty. There are currently between 3 to 4 million Arabs living in Israel, many of whom do not pledge allegiance to the state. The idea of allowing those who openly oppose Israel to remain in positions of influence is unfathomable. It is shocking that there are individuals in the Knesset, Israel's very own government, who refuse to swear loyalty to the nation, while simultaneously supporting groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood and other terrorist organizations. This situation must change. The path forward is clear. Israel must work to ensure that only those who genuinely support the nation and uphold its values are given the right to remain as residents. If, after necessary processes, the number of Arabs residing in Israel were reduced to approximately 1 million, those remaining would be individuals who respect and support Israel. These would be people who, rather than coming from violent and terror-infested regions, choose to embrace the peace and opportunities that Israel offers. These individuals would be welcomed wholeheartedly, just as Western nations prioritize good, law-abiding, and upstanding citizens. Once this process is completed, Israel must move toward fully asserting its sovereignty over key regions, starting with Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. Even parts of southern Lebanon should be declared sovereign Israeli territory. This is not just a strategic move, but a necessary one. It is absolutely absurd that the 500,000 Jews currently residing in Judea and Samaria do not have full citizen rights in their own ancient homeland. This injustice must end. It is beyond reason that Jews living in historic biblical sites such as Shiloh, Hebron, Bethel, and Shechem do not have the full rights of citizenship because these areas have not been officially declared sovereign Israeli territory. Even parts of Jerusalem are subject to this issue. This must change, and with the right leadership, it will. With the incoming administration in the United States, there is a real opportunity to support Israel in taking these necessary steps. The world must recognize that Israel is not just a small nation but is on the path to restoring its former greatness. When we speak of Israel's past greatness, we are referring to its strength, prosperity, and divine purpose as recorded in the Bible. The nation of Israel was once a powerful empire, and it is now on the brink of reclaiming that status. Those who fail to see this reality are simply not paying attention. Israel's rapid rise in the region is undeniable, but one crucial element is still missing. This missing piece is often dismissed as unrealistic or even radical, but it is something that has been prophesied for millennia. The final step in Israel's restoration is the full reclaiming and restoration of the Temple Mount. Perhaps, just perhaps, the next U.S. administration under Donald J. Trump could be the catalyst for this monumental event. Trump has proven time and again his deep support for Israel. He understands the Middle East in a way few leaders do. He is a builder, a man who loves grand projects, and there is no greater undertaking than restoring Israel's most sacred site. If he fully grasps the historical and spiritual significance of the Temple Mount, he may be willing to support Israel in reclaiming it as a place of worship for all nations. This is a vision that was foretold by the prophets, and we may now be on the brink of seeing it fulfilled. Of course, any move to assert Jewish rights on the Temple Mount would be met with resistance. The world would be in an uproar. Critics would predict widespread violence, just as they did when President Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and declared it Israel's eternal capital. At the time, the media and world leaders warned of chaos, war, and destruction. But what actually happened? Nothing of the sort. Instead, Israel experienced a period of peace, unlike anything seen in recent years. The same result would likely follow if Israel, with US backing, were to take steps to restore Jewish rights on the Temple Mount. The fear-mongering voices would be silenced when the predicted catastrophes failed to materialize. Instead, there would be a renewed sense of unity and strength in Israel. We are living in a pivotal moment in history. The steps that Israel takes now will determine its future, and we must be bold. It is time to act. As believers, we must continue to pray for Israel and stand with her as she moves toward fulfilling her prophetic destiny. In Jewish tradition, there is a prayer that has been recited for generations, a prayer for the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. This prayer has echoed through the centuries, and today we stand on the precipice of seeing it answered. Could it happen in our lifetime? With the right support, with divine timing, and with the courage to take action, the answer is yes. America has always stood with Israel, and perhaps now, more than ever, we have the opportunity to support her in ways never seen before. What if we are the generation that witnesses these historic events? What if we see the fulfillment of prophecy right before our eyes? Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, continue to pray for Israel. Tune out the fake news and focus on what is truly happening in the heartland of Israel. The time for action is now.
It's a key element of biblical prophecy involving the return of Jesus Christ to the earth, building a third temple in Jerusalem. Now there's a movement in Israel to make it happen.
The discussion surrounding the rebuilding of the third temple in Jerusalem has gained increasing attention, particularly in light of political shifts and recent global events. The Trump administration, known for its strong pro-Israel stance, had many officials who were vocal supporters of Israel's right to expand its sovereignty, including on the Temple Mount. Figures such as former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and former Governor Mike Huckabee were outspoken about their support for the Jewish right to worship and even rebuild the temple, aligning their views with Christian eschatology and biblical prophecy. To understand how the Trump administration's role might impact the advancement of the Third Temple, we need to examine the broader context. In 2023, significant religious developments were underway in Israel, particularly concerning the Red Heifer ceremony. The Red Heifer, a crucial element in Jewish purification rituals, was expected to be sacrificed between Passover and Pentecost in 2024. This timeline was disrupted due to geopolitical tensions and the war between Israel and Hamas, which escalated on October 7, 2023. The Biden administration, which has been perceived as less friendly towards Israel compared to the Trump administration, created additional hurdles for Israeli leadership in its efforts to secure U.S. military aid while balancing religious aspirations with national security concerns. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, known for his strategic approach to governance, has always recognized the existential threats posed by surrounding hostile entities such as Hamas and Hezbollah. In the wake of the October 7th attacks, Netanyahu was clear in his stance that Hamas had no future in the Gaza Strip. However, his government faced opposition from the Biden administration, which, for reasons that remain subject to debate, seemed to favor policies that allowed Hamas to maintain influence in the region. Some analysts speculate that these policies could be traced back to the Obama administration's approach to Middle Eastern affairs. Despite these challenges, Netanyahu needed to secure weapons and support from the U.S. while simultaneously managing the religious elements of his government. The current Israeli administration is considered the most religiously inclined in the country's 78-year history, with many officials advocating for greater sovereignty over the Temple Mount. Netanyahu, however, had to prioritize national survival, knowing that any sudden movement towards reclaiming the Temple Mount could provoke violent backlash and further destabilize the region. Amidst this turmoil, a significant development occurred. Before the October 7th attack, Hamas had never publicly mentioned the red heifers, which were being prepared for the purification ceremony. However, in January 2024, Hamas made a statement citing the red heifers as one of the reasons for their attack on Israel. This revelation confirmed that the ceremony had become a key point of contention in the ongoing conflict. Prior to this, discussions about the ceremony had been actively taking place since mid-2023, with religious leaders preparing for a massive global live stream, reaching an estimated 800 million people. However, after Hamas's statement, Israeli religious authorities were forced to put the ceremony on hold. The Temple Institute, the leading organization advocating for the reconstruction of the Third Temple, had to adjust its public messaging, emphasizing that the event would only proceed under peaceful circumstances. Given the prominence of the Mount of Olives as a potential location for the ceremony, secrecy was impossible. Any large bonfire, a requirement for the sacrifice, would be visible to both Jewish and Palestinian communities surrounding the site, ensuring that the event could not take place without public awareness. With the suspension of the ceremony, anticipation built throughout early 2024. Many believed that the situation would remain in limbo until the political landscape changed. On January 20th, 2025, with Trump's return to office, everything shifted. Under his leadership, the U.S. immediately resumed arms shipments to Israel, fulfilling previous agreements. This change in administration reignited hope among religious leaders and temple advocates that progress toward the Third Temple could resume. One of the major factors influencing the timing of the Red Heifer ceremony is the ongoing conflict with Lebanon and the negotiations regarding hostages held by Hamas. If these security concerns stabilize, the ceremony could be scheduled during any of the major Jewish festivals, including Passover, Pentecost, or the fall feasts, such as Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. Religious authorities have expressed a preference for aligning the event with a significant festival to maximize interest and participation. With Trump back in office, rabbis and religious leaders in Israel are experiencing renewed optimism. Many believe that the next 4 years provide a crucial window of opportunity to advance their goals. However, there is another pressing issue: the aging of the red heifers. Out of the remaining 3 heifers eligible for the ritual, none are guaranteed to remain viable indefinitely. While Jewish law does not specify an upper age limit, natural aging and the potential development of disqualifying blemishes create an urgency to perform the ritual sooner rather than later. Another challenge involves internal disagreements among religious authorities. Just as in ancient times, when the Pharisees and Sadducees were divided, modern-day Jewish factions hold differing views on how and when the ceremony should be conducted. Temple advocates are striving to build consensus among religious leaders to ensure broad support for the ceremony when it takes place. Beyond the practical challenges, there is a profound spiritual dimension to Netanyahu's role in this unfolding narrative. According to first-hand reports from figures such as Robert Malley, an individual closely involved in the acquisition of the red heifers, Netanyahu has privately expressed a belief that he is divinely appointed to oversee the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Malley, who has been recognized for his contributions to Israeli religious efforts, claims that Netanyahu confided in him that he feels called by God to be the prime minister who facilitates the temple's reconstruction. Whether this conviction is purely political rhetoric or a genuine spiritual calling remains uncertain. However, the fact that Netanyahu has reportedly made such statements underscores his alignment with the broader movement pushing for the temple's restoration. Looking ahead, the next few years will be crucial in determining whether these aspirations come to fruition. With Trump in office, Israel's religious leadership is optimistic about renewed American support. However, geopolitical stability, security considerations, and internal religious unity will all play decisive roles in whether the long-awaited Red Heifer ceremony and ultimately the rebuilding of the Third Temple becomes a reality.
Opening the door to the building of the Third Jewish Temple, some called it a kiss from heaven.
Since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, many have wondered if and when a new temple will be built. Some biblical prophecy scholars believe it must be rebuilt before certain end-time events, such as those described in Daniel 12:1, can occur. But what does the Bible actually say about this Third Temple, and when might it appear? To understand this, we need to explore the stories of the first 2 temples in Jerusalem. The story of the temple begins with the first permanent building constructed to honor God. King David wanted to build a grand house for God, but God declined, saying he was content with a tent for now. Previously, God had instructed the Israelites to build a portable tent called the tabernacle, which they could carry during their travels. Despite God's refusal, he promised David that his family would always rule, and one of his descendants would eventually build a house for God. David's son, Solomon, fulfilled this by building what became known as the House of the Lord on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. This temple was a central place of worship in Israel for about 400 years, from its construction until its destruction by the Babylonians in 586 BC, as recounted in 2 Kings 25:9. The Temple Mount is located in Jerusalem on a leveled area spanning roughly 36 acres atop Mount Moriah. This site holds immense historical significance. In Genesis 22:24, we learn that Abraham was instructed to journey there to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice. Later, King David acquired a threshing floor from Ornan at this site, following a divine response received after sacrificing to God. Recognizing its sanctity, David declared, "This is the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar of burnt offering for Israel." 1 Chronicles 21:18-22. 1. It was on Mount Moriah that Solomon began the construction of the temple in Jerusalem, a place where the Lord had appeared to David. This location, often referred to as Zion, was specifically chosen by God as his dwelling place, and he vowed to establish his name there forever. For centuries, the belief in the eventual return of Israel to its ancient homeland and the reconstruction of the temple has been deeply ingrained within both Christian and Jewish communities. This conviction, rooted in biblical prophecies, has captivated the minds and hearts of believers, inspiring many to delve into the scriptures in search of clues and signs of fulfillment. Although the biblical texts are not always explicit, there are 3 scriptural indications of another temple. Among these, 2 suggest the existence of a literal temple, while the third is symbolic in nature. One indication of the third temple's significance is the prophecy that sacrifices will be resumed. According to the book of Daniel, sacrifices will cease in the end times. This leads some to believe that the Jews will construct a new temple in Jerusalem before Jesus Christ's return. The construction of a third temple on the Temple Mount is a contentious issue between Arabs and Israelis, as the site currently hosts 2 significant Islamic structures, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Some individuals expect that the Jewish people may build another temple before Christ's return. However, it is also possible they might start offering sacrifices on an altar without constructing a full temple, similar to practices before the Second Temple was built. This precedent can be seen in the book of Ezra, where sacrifices were resumed before the temple's foundation was laid. In Ezra 3:1-6 we read, "When the 7th month came and the sons of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered together as one man to Jerusalem. Then Jeshua the son of Jozadak and his brothers the priests, and Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and his brothers arose and built the altar of the God of Israel, to offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God. So they set up the altar on its old foundation, for they were terrified because of the peoples of the lands, and they offered burnt offerings on it to the Lord morning and evening. They celebrated the Feast of Booths, as it is written, and offered the fixed number of daily burnt offerings according to the ordinance, as each day required. And afterward there was a continual burnt offering, also for the new moons, and for all the fixed festivals of the Lord that were consecrated, and from everyone who offered a free will offering to the Lord. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, but the foundation of the temple of the Lord had not been laid." This passage shows that the Jewish people, even in times of difficulty and fear, prioritized re-establishing their religious practices by building an altar and resuming sacrifices. This historical context suggests that sacrifices could resume before a new temple is built, fulfilling prophecy and aligning with practices from ancient times. In conclusion, the resumption of sacrifices, whether on an altar or in a newly built temple, is a key indicator of the anticipated Third Temple. This act would align with biblical prophecy and historical precedents, reflecting the enduring importance of these religious practices and their potential role in end-time events. The complex political and religious landscape of the Temple Mount adds layers of contention and anticipation to this prophetic expectation. Ezekiel's vision. Ezekiel, born into a priestly lineage, served God as a prophet. In the book of Ezekiel, chapters 40-48, he shares a detailed vision of a grand and glorious temple. This vision has been the subject of much speculation and various interpretations over the years. Ezekiel began his prophetic ministry before the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in 586 BC. Before the destruction, many false prophets convinced the people that God was with them and that nothing would happen to them. Ezekiel 13:8-16. However, true prophets like Jeremiah and Ezekiel warned the people that God's judgment was imminent. Ezekiel 2:3-8. In Ezekiel 8-11, the prophet has a vision in which he sees the glory of God leaving the temple. Ezekiel was exiled to Babylon, most likely during the second deportation of Jews in 597 BC. While in exile, he encouraged Israel by assuring them that judgment would not last forever, and that God would restore Israel, and once again, dwell among them. In Ezekiel 37, he shares the vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, where he describes the revival of dead Israel through reunification and reanimation. Ezekiel prophesies in chapters 38-39 about a battle between Israel and its enemies, Gog and Magog, with Israel emerging victorious. In chapters 40-48, Ezekiel describes a magnificent new temple built in the 25th year of Israel's captivity. The glory of God returns in chapter 43, and sacrifices are resumed in chapters 44-46. Finally, in chapters 47-48, the land is restored to the people of Israel. Ezekiel 40:38-43 describes the details. A chamber with its doorway was by the side pillars of the gates. There they washed the burnt offering. In the porch of the gate were 2 tables on each side, on which to slaughter the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. On the outer side, as one went up to the gateway toward the north, were 2 tables, and on the other side of the porch of the gate were 2 tables. 4 tables were on each side next to the gate, a total of 8 tables on which they slaughtered sacrifices. Moreover, there were 4 tables of hewn stone for the burnt offering, each a cubit and a half long, a cubit and a half wide, and 1 cubit high, on which they laid the instruments for slaughtering the burnt offering and the sacrifice. The double hooks, 1 handbreadth in length, were installed in the house all around. The meat of the offering was to be placed on the tables. Ezekiel's vision is not just about physical restoration, but also spiritual transformation. The hearts of the people will be changed, and even Gentiles will have a place in the restored kingdom. Ezekiel 36:26-27 states, "Moreover, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my ordinances and do them." Additionally, Ezekiel 47:22 explains, "You shall divide it by lot as an inheritance among yourselves and among the foreigners who stay among you, who give birth to sons among you. They shall be to you as the native born among the children of Israel. They shall be allotted an inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel." In Ezekiel's vision of the temple, he is transported to Israel, where he sees a mountain and a city. As he approaches, he encounters a man whose appearance is like bronze, standing in the gateway. The man holds a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. The prophecy reveals that the land will be ruled by a Davidic prince, as stated in Ezekiel 44:3. "As for the prince, he shall sit in it as prince to eat bread before the Lord. He shall enter by way of the porch of the gate, and shall go out by the same way." The man instructs Ezekiel to pay close attention to everything he witnesses and hears, and to communicate all the details to God's people. The next 3 chapters of Ezekiel are occupied with measuring the design of the temple complex. Ezekiel's detailed description of the temple includes various chambers, gates, and altars. The temple's dimensions and the placement of its features are meticulously outlined. This attention to detail has led some scholars to believe that Ezekiel's vision might describe a literal future temple that will be built in Jerusalem. Others interpret the vision symbolically, suggesting it represents the future perfection and spiritual restoration of God's people rather than a physical structure.